Near every single one of us thought that Microsoft had absolutely lost their mind in 2013. But is it possible that they were right? Has the Xbox One made gaming's greatest comeback? It's a strange question, a question that shouldn't be answered with sales numbers, but one that's relatively easy to answer. I've been at this greatest comeback series for almost a year now, and it's focused exclusively on games that have made dramatic turnarounds. But it's rare that a system even needs this kind of life support, but not in the units moved kind of way, but in the brand recovery kind of way. And yet the Xbox One appeared to be absolutely dead in the water. Yet here we are, 6 years later in 2019, staring down the barrel of the next generation, and somehow the gaming landscape has changed dramatically. Two things. This is not a piece that pits the PS4 and Xbox One against each other. That's pointless. The PlayStation 4 is phenomenal and has placed itself and Sony in an excellent position and has rightfully dominated the console space for years. And we get it. We all know the complaints. The Xbox One has no games. The Xbox One can't compete with the PS4. But I'm not entirely sure that that narrative is one that is still in any way dictating the success of this console. So today we look at where the Xbox One has actually landed, in isolation, whether or not it's actually become worth a purchase, or whether or not the purported comeback of the system is an overblown narrative created by people with an emotional attachment to the brand. This is the new Xbox.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
Absolute total cluster. Before we talk about what Xbox is today, we have to talk about absolute rock bottom. People were excited for 2013. The Xbox One and the PS4 were set to be fully unmasked and a new generation set to begin. So how does this sound? A grand reveal of a brand new Xbox, the follow-up to one of the most successful modern consoles. Now what about this? An always on and require connect thing is massive and invasive. You're gonna love it. Speaking of always on, this thing needs to be always online. It's amazing, trust me. But don't mention games, not today. This thing knows what you really want. TV. Oh, you said you like TV? Sports. And to top it all off, you're gonna love this. We have DRM functionality that will make sure you too feel like you're just renting our games. It's the 2010s, no one owns anything online. Now that you're hooked, give us an exorbitant $500 for it all, and we'll call it a deal. This was the reveal of the Xbox One. Microsoft bet big on the prevailing, then current, narrative. Video game-focused consoles are dying. They placed a massive emphasis on the Xbox One as an always online, family-focused entertainment system, and PR'd their way into hell. When asked about the people that had terrible internet, Microsoft actually told a reporter that it's too bad for them and the soldiers overseas. There's a console for them. It's called the Xbox 360. Microsoft apparently genuinely thought the DRM functions of the system were, as senior director of project management at Microsoft put it, quote-unquote, cool. They thought the Kinect, which would always be watching you night and day, was cool as well. Unfortunately for them, the consumer base didn't. Head of Xbox Don Matrick was almost immediately fired or moved on, leaving CEO C. Ballmer to take over, who would also move on just months later. The Xbox brand was a burning house that Microsoft could not find their way out of. So, they reversed course on near everything. They quite literally took it all back. They launched the Xbox One in a totally different condition than the one with which they assured us it would launch in. The Xbox One was more expensive and had a competitor that was all too willing to feast on every error their green competition made. It's been nearly 6 years since all of that transpired. The Xbox One launched and the narrative carried, but things around late 2014 began to change. Let's talk about the Xbox has no games. For those of you that think that Xbox games aren't selling, here's some numbers. Halo 5 Guardians outsold both Destiny 2 and Fallout 4 physically on the Xbox One. The time console exclusive PUBG sold 8 million copies on the system. The Xbox One has 20 Xbox console exclusives sitting at over an 80 review aggregate on Metacritic. Yes, It is easy to look at the system through the lens of its competition and degrade it, but part of the system's comeback has a lot to do with games. Microsoft has lagged behind, far behind, Sony when it comes to producing exclusives this generation, and despite popular belief, they absolutely do matter. But the Xbox One has forced Microsoft to better understand that very reality. Unfortunately, this is a newer revelation, but one that's led to a change. Microsoft relied too heavily on aging IPs this gen. Gears of War, Halo dominated their press, both receiving lackluster remaster collections and above average new entries. But as the generation went on, things began to change. Microsoft's risks began to fall apart. Scalebound never got close to being finished and fell apart midway through development, leading to a full cancellation. Quantum Break was a novel, TV-infused idea that fell flat commercially. Crackdown 3 is or was a cloud-based venture that was so often delayed that it looked for a while to be vaporware. Slowly, however, the light began to shine. Cuphead was a smash success, taking over Twitch and becoming the most watched and played game for its launch window. Sunset Overdrive was an underplayed third-party success that Insomniac should be proud of, and Forza continues to be the most successful and possibly best racing franchise on the market. The point where every Sea of Thieves, which by the way has improved dramatically over the course of the last year, there's an Ori in the Blind Forest. Microsoft knows this, so they've made the incredibly smart decision to double down. Last year, Microsoft opened 5 new first-party studios, and better yet, acquired 2 more, including Obsidian, the people behind Fallout New Vegas. Essentially, Microsoft has made the smartest PR move they could have made: refocus Xbox on games. And that change is where the comeback continues.
Ryan, please say over when you finish talking. Over.
What? Over?
Do you see the wire yet? Over.
No.
No. What? Over.
No, over.
Here's something we kind of know based on preliminary reports. Xbox sales have doubled since 2017. It's about the only concrete sales data we have since Microsoft essentially went silent about sales numbers a little while back. Microsoft's biggest enemy has never been PlayStation or Nintendo, it's always been itself. The company was 7 years ahead of schedule with the messaging for the Xbox One. Now the rumor is the next Xbox may have DRM functionality. It may be exactly what they had planned 6 years ago. The difference now, where Microsoft has started to turn it around, specifically heading into 2020, is messaging. As Sony fights vigorously to maintain its independence from the also terrifying cross-play apocalypse, Microsoft has encouraged it, welcomed it with wide open arms. It has been the brother of gaming. I honestly believe if Rockstar wanted it, Microsoft would be the first person trying to make Red Dead Online crossplay. They've painted themselves as for the gamer and with the gamer. They painted themselves as the hero. As companies shift away from E3, the Nintendos of the world, the Sonys, Microsoft has held steady, ready to not show games necessarily, but to show gamers that games are what matters to them, and you know what? So too does innovation. Microsoft has begun to recognize the types of third-party offerings that gamers are looking for, and they've tried to capture those for themselves. The notoriously Japanese-averse system is the one and only system, for example, where you can play the Devil May Cry 5 demo. Back when that was available, they've struck deals with the absolute biggest games in the world, like PUBG, in an effort to make their platform the one and only place to play certain games, even if it's just for a time, and even if it's just in limited capacities. They became the marketing partners for Battlefield 5, and there are even rumors that they will be taking over as marketing partners for Cyberpunk 2077, a game that may end up being just as big as The Witcher 3, but take that rumor with a huge grain of salt. The point is, these realities are beginning to coalesce. People in the base gaming community forget just how important these partnerships are. Sure, we know that a marketing partnership for Battlefield 5 means essentially nothing, and we know Devil May Cry is not an Xbox exclusive, but little Timmy making his Christmas list doesn't. Timmy's mom shopping at Walmart doesn't. Timmy and his family watched the Battlefield 5 commercial end with the Xbox logo and believe that for Timmy to play Battlefield 5, the Xbox is the item they must purchase. Now it's worth noting that Sony has done a better job than pretty much anyone else in this area this gen, but Microsoft's turnaround over the past year and a half in regards to PR and marketing has been commendable at worst and astonishing at best. But what's a bit more astonishing is just how Microsoft is willing to take these risks to make Xbox One a value. They're willing to essentially give away the house for next to nothing. This next move was shocking and genuinely something we haven't seen anywhere else in gaming.
Oh, wait a minute, hold
on. We're just patsies. We're just a couple of users. We never solved the stuff. What about the Russian guy? The Russian guy's the guy you want.
What if I told you that you could buy a brand new current gen console today and immediately, for just $10 a month, have access to over 200 games, current gen and past? What if I told you that you could download these games and play them whenever you want, including PUBG, Sea of Thieves, huge AAA releases? What if I told you that you could do all of this on a console you can find for as low as $225? Xbox Games Pass has taken the console from a borderline afterthought in terms of pricing and made the Xbox One quite possibly the greatest value that modern gaming has ever seen. That sentence struck me as hyperbole as I wrote it, but before I could delete it, I realized just how true it is. Games Pass is an interesting idea. Take a library of games and treat them as just that, a library, where you check out what you want for as long as you want. What makes Game Pass so special, what changes the system with Games Pass, is how you now view your purchases. It's much easier to justify the purchase of a system if you know that for the price of 2 games, you get year-long access to over 200 of them, with more being added constantly. Not only that, but the games that aren't in Games Pass, or even the games that are, you're often getting deals on special Games Pass pricing. But it gets even more ridiculous. Microsoft has made it a point to get one reality across to gamers. All first-party Xbox One titles from here moving forward will launch on Games Pass. That means the next Gears, Crackdown 3, and even past games like the aforementioned Sea of Thieves are available on the system and available on Games Pass. The amount of money Games Pass could potentially save the hardcore gamer is absurd. Better still, Games Pass is now no longer tied to your Xbox. Now your Xbox Games Pass games are available on PC as well, which essentially means that the Xbox brand is offering a massive library of games that you can play on 2 entirely different systems for $10 a month. So assuming that Xbox continues its course shift and it decides to allow you for $10 a month to sign up for Xbox Game Pass and access it at your desk and computer too, that's a huge bargain. This also offsets the no games narrative a bit. Yes, Microsoft again is lagged far behind from an exclusive standpoint, but it's hard to stare at a new Xbox One and argue there's nothing to play with 200 games ready to download at your fingertips. But there was a far bigger risk that Microsoft took this gen to recover the brand. That honestly did, and in some ways did not, work out.
I am so powerful. My mind, it amazes me sometimes.
The PlayStation 4 Pro is great. I know that's a controversial opinion in some corners of the web, but it's a luxury in-betweener console that provides a marginal boost in power for those that are seeking it. Cool. But the Xbox One X, now that has done wonders for the Xbox brand and the players playing it. Microsoft stopped releasing hard sales numbers a long time ago, probably because their numbers lag far behind their competition. But the Xbox One X's successes have nothing to do with units sold, at least in this particular model. See, the Xbox One X was a statement. Sony's biggest narrative push at the beginning of the gen was the reality that the base PS4 model was more powerful and more graphically capable than the Xbox One. It didn't matter how much more, it just mattered that it was. The Xbox One X was an end of a generation statement. We have the tech and we can outpower you, and we will. I won't bore you with the specs, but let's put it this way. From CPU to GPU to memory bandwidth, across the board, the X is more powerful than the PS4 Pro. And it shows. Playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on the Xbox One X and playing it on the Pro are vastly different visual experiences. I tried it myself on a multitude of occasions. The X shifts the messaging going into next generation. As this one ends, if you want the most powerful console, it's Microsoft you have to look towards. Unfortunately, the X probably came 2 years too late for the company, and its legacy will likely be one forgotten amongst what is probably a confined market, but there's no question that Microsoft put themselves back on top of a race that they've been running for decades. The power race. The X allowed the company to shift their focus, as they spent E3s now touting power, touting the power of the X, the power of Scarlett, touting innovation in the console space, the console for gamers. That will matter. Maybe not to you or me, maybe not to the hardcore gamer watching these videos, but to the casual consumer, which one looks the best? Which one makes my games prettier? The age-old question, well, that's finally back up in the air. The Xbox One X probably is not selling gangbusters. I cannot confirm or deny that. It's probably not flying off of shelves, but what it is doing is making people think when they walk into a store. It's making people think about where they lie next generation, and as the new gen reveals get closer, people will remember that at the end of all of this, Microsoft was leading the one race that matters to so many of you and so many of us: power. The Xbox One is a dramatically different value today than it was even just a couple of years ago. Sure, the system still has its problems. Yes, it currently doesn't have the greatest exclusive library, but what the Xbox One is at this point is maybe the safest purchase you can make in gaming, depending on the type of games you like to play. Microsoft has done an excellent job of reversing the narrative. It's easy in the digital age to forget when a company like Microsoft screws up, but no one forgot. No one left that 2013 launch behind, at least not in the gaming community. Microsoft didn't change history. They wrote over it. We've seen this before. We saw it with the PS3. We saw it with little things like backwards compatibility. Gamers wanted something long after Microsoft's flubs, and Sony didn't give it to them. Microsoft did. It doesn't make them better or worse than each other, but it does increase value. But what we have now is a company that will be starting next generation on even PR footing for that very reason. Sure, they may not be on level sales footing, but they won't be fighting from nearly as far behind as they once were. Gamers have their loyalties, and there's no question that Sony is still the dominant force in the console market, and even with their PR missteps over the past year, that reality shows no signs of becoming fantasy, but the surrounding circumstances changed. No one should feel ashamed at this point of being an Xbox fan. You should be proud. You have a system on your hands that does a whole hell of a lot right. And there's no one in Sony's camp that should be walking around assuming that their console is so vastly superior to what Microsoft offers. It's not. Microsoft and the Xbox are absolutely worthy of competing in a market they once almost self-destructed their way out of. And I'm once again more than excited about what they have to offer moving forward. Scarlett could be the Xbox's tour de force. If you stop taking the system seriously, now's the time to start.
That is it for today's video, guys, and as always, I want to know what you think. Do you think the Xbox One has made a great and in some ways amazing comeback? Maybe the greatest we've seen in a long time, or do you think Xbox took a giant step back even after their giant step back in 2013? And most importantly, now with Gears of War 5 out and Death Stranding on PS4, what do you think the most important exclusive of this generation was, either on Microsoft or Sony's side? It could even be Nintendo's side. Do you think that Microsoft had an exclusive that actually ended up being important, or do you think they all land in Sony or Nintendo's hands? Let me know the answer to any of those questions down in the comments below. It's up for real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, press that like button. If you have not yet done so, press subscribe too. Also, there's a little bell next to the subscribe button. I say this in every single video. It's never going to end, but it's so important. All that little bell does is make sure you're actually notified when I upload a video. That's it. All it does is make sure you're actually notified when I upload. So hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. And until next time, guys, I'm out.